Reverend, how are you?
Doing well. How are you? I see your.
I got my blood up here today, but I'm doing
I
okay.
already
I just
have
said that publicly here.
Bill's evaluation form.
Last name, what's the last name
I
with
have
you?
to dig for that, but I'll send it to you.
I already know. Oh, okay.
There he is. Yeah, to get his coffee.
Bill, the new evaluator.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Human Resources Committee, where Rob Werman is the chairman. I'm going to turn this portion of it over to Mr. Werman. Mr. Werman.
Prior, again, this is a meeting of the Human Resources Committee. Members of the committee are Councilwoman Honeycutt, Councilman Moody, Councilman Schweers, of course, Chairman Pryor, and myself. The first item of the agenda is approval of the minutes of May 19th.
So moved.
Seconded, all approve?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. All right, our next item is 2A. I believe this is a discussion that I'd asked for on, whether it be some sort of parental or maybe extended some form of leave that I understand our folks at Human Resources are ready to kind of discuss and give us some information about.
Councilman Werman. First of all, I wanted to let you all know what a new employee receives when they come to Charleston County as far as paid benefits go. So first of all, there's annual leave, and if I'm going to speak as if this is someone working a standard 40-hour week, they would earn 10 days per year. And then they also earn sick leave, which is at a rate of 1 per month, so 12 days per year. So we understand that as they are accruing those, they may have a situation where they need to take time off, but they don't have enough accrued yet in order to take time off. So we have two proposals that one we're running after, and a second one we would like to present to you to see if it's a proposal you would like us to go after. So the first one is a short-term disability policy. Now, you may recall we had short-term disability a few years ago, and we came to a point where we needed to end it due to the administration with the company that we were with. We were having a lot of issues with that, so we needed to end it. And it was with the idea that once that was cleaned up and out of the way, we could look at bringing it back again. So we have a request for information out right now, and procurement has informed me that we've had 19 interested parties that are going to most likely make proposals to us when this closes. So there are a lot of companies out there that offer short-term disability. So we would like to take a look at that. We did that as an RFI instead of an RFP, request for information rather than proposal, because we wanted to find out what the different options were. Instead of us making criteria, we wanted to learn what was out there for us. So that's one step. The second thing is we're looking at doing a program where we would be able to put 120 hours of emergency sick leave into a bank for each employee. And we would like to pursue this further. It would mean that that would be a change to our HR policies if we're going to do that. And we're looking at putting, this would be a one-time bank, and we're looking at putting a limit on the minimum number of days that someone would have to use, and they would have to have qualifying events in order to use that leave. So what we would like to do is just talk to you about the proposal, get your support on just the idea of doing this, and then we would research it, write a policy, and then bring the policy back to you, at which time you could approve or deny that to be put in place. So we think that those two items will make some strides forward in the request that we've heard from some of our staff members about parental leave. And the request was based on that the state is going to offer parental leave to their employees, it looks like beginning in the fall. The parameters of that have not been worked out yet. They put that on their HR department. So we don't know for sure how that is going to be put in place, but we would like to have something that would help out that group of people as well. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
Thank you, Ms. Holden. Any questions from members of council? I should have said earlier that obviously any member of council can participate and ask questions, not just the members of the committee. Ms. Johnson?
Yes. So I think I heard you say that the employees would accrue 12 days sick leave when they first, they would get that right away?
No,
Or they would accrue?
it's accrued on every month,
One a month, okay.
yes.
So.
And that's already in place. That's our current policy.
Okay. And so this sick leave bank that you are thinking about, can you give us some idea what thoughts you have in mind first?
Okay, I sure can. So it would be in addition to what they're accrued. This would be an additional item. Right now, we're calling it emergency sick leave. We can come up with a different title for it. But that would be 120 hours that would be put into a bank for every employee. That 3 weeks, basically, could be used if there is a qualifying event, such as the birth of a child, taking care of their own personal health situation. And then they could use that anytime while they work here. You could be 3 or 4 years into working here and have an emergency where you have to have a surgery and be off work for a while. So, but it would be a one-time bank for the duration of their employment here.
All right, I'm glad to hear that that's one time, but now, how do you get the money built up for this 120
Hours.
hours? So if you had right away 100 people was using that or whatever.
Well, from a budgetary standpoint, that is not a cost because we would be paying someone to work and now we would be paying them not to work. So we've budgeted for the full annual salary anyway.
Okay, that sounds better.
Yes.
All right, answered my question. Thank you.
Councilman Middleton?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman of this committee. I'm not on the committee, but certainly I always have questions. After supervising people under human resource kind of parameters, there are other types of leaves that could kick in, like FMLA, depending categorically on what their circumstance may be. And then if you got the short-term disability back up and running, that also could be something that could be afforded to this group of people. And then lastly, not necessarily contemplating the emergency sick leave bank, but there are companies that allow for people who have accrued so much time to donate time into such into such a bank of time. Like I know in certain systems, if I have so much time and Mr. Swears has a catastrophic emergency and he has no time, then there's a form I could fill out to transfer my time, some time to him so that he might be able to not be punitively, kind of his pay wouldn't be suffering from that, and that time could be transferred to him. So there are other mechanisms too that might be something to think about in the whole configuration of how to satisfy those individuals who have not accrued time.
Yes, I would agree. And that's certainly something that has been done in particularly private sector, but in several companies for many years. And it would be something that we would look at too.
Have Mr. Moody and then Mr. Schweers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Holden, thank you. I wanted to follow up on Councilmember Middleton's comment because I think the county had done that before, and I believe, Mr. Middleton, there was a lot of game playing going on, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to ask staff to respond on it, but it was taken away and eliminated because there was a lot of people taking advantage.
You mean
of
the
things.
transferring of?
They were doing all kinds of stuff. We can talk about it back there if you want, or if we have to go back there, we can talk about it. Ms. Holden, I want to follow up on something Ms. Johnson, she brought up a good point. Cost. So if Ms. Ham's assistant goes out, well, then maybe we're in a professional office setting and we all just say, you know what, we're going to suck it up and somebody will watch the desk for 5 hours, somebody will watch it, whatever. They'll make it happen. But EMS or sheriff or public works, you can't do that. So if somebody's out, you have to pay overtime or additional duty pay or hire temps. I mean, there's going to be a cost.
Yes, that would definitely be true. Also remember, though, the persons, if they have a qualifying event, that means they broke their leg and they can't come to work, they're going to be out anyway. This
Okay,
is
fair
just a
enough.
question about whether or not we're going to pay them for it. So if we don't pay them and they're out, we still have to cover their time if they're in those critical areas.
Okay, fair enough. So the 3 weeks, that starts every employee. I mean, there's no
Accrual?
accrual in. So you know, whoever guy's been here forever. So so whoever gets hired on July 1st gets the same benefit that Mr. Armstrong gets, who's been here a long time, considerably longer.
True. That's true. And the idea is, again, they accrue sick time, but somebody has an event when they've been here 6 months. They don't have enough time in there, so they would be able to access this bank. And yes, if someone who has been here 20 years has an event, they also could access that bank. I will tell you that many people, as you referred to, have many, many hours in their sick bank, people that have been here for a long time.
Well,
so it's,
yeah, and I would agree with you. And I mean, they have been here a long time, but there's also some planning, I think, that would go into this. So when I was having children, I saved my days up. I didn't go to the beach. I didn't take days off. I saved my days up so that I might be able to then go do that. I didn't burn them as soon as I got them and then go look to my employer and go, I burned up all my days doing all this fun stuff. Now I need you to come and take care of this. So somewhere in the middle is where there's got to be a sweet spot. So anyway, those are just some of the issues. But I would be interested to know if there are any additional costs because of overtime, temp, duty, additional duty pay or anything like that, to the extent that you may be able to project that.
okay.
I think that's it, Mr. Woman.
Thank you, Councilman Moody. Councilman Schwiers.
Ms. Holden, I certainly do sympathize with brand new employees. I was one myself at one point, and it is challenging, as Mr. Moody pointed out, when you have kids. You know, you're married, you have kids. It is challenging to manage the very little leave you get. So, so you said new employees get 1 day per month sick leave, and they accumulate that continuously.
Currently.
One day per month.
Yes,
Okay.
that's in the policy.
Also, vacation. What does a new employee get for vacation?
Well, it would be 2 weeks in the first year, basically. It's 80 hours. And see, we have different schedules. So if you work a 12-hour shift or you work an 8-hour shift, but we're trying.
Is that available though from day one, or is that not until a certain date in the
It's accrued. So
Okay.
on your first
You have to build that up as well.
week,
Yeah.
you're going to show that you got 3 hours in there, and then it will
Okay.
build up.
Okay. I mean, I'm with Brantley. When it was me, I managed it. I didn't take vacation, never dreamed of it, and probably went to work sick even because I didn't want to use any sick leave initially. To me, the problem is on the front end, not on the back end. I mean, 10-year, 20-year employee that doesn't have any sick leave or doesn't have any vacation, obviously has not planned. So I don't have much sympathy for them. And most of the folks, that I worked with in the past, by the time they retired, they had bukus of vacation and sick leave to deal with. So again, I don't have much sympathy for the ones that have been there a long time. So I think the real challenge for us is to try to solve it on the front end and not not just do a blanket solution even. If, I don't know if it's possible to, limit the program to, folks that have been here 5 years or less. And again, still have requirements that it has to be a valid emergency. You have to prove it was this emergency. Somehow manage it that way, and it's not without cost. There certainly is cost to it. Have we researched what other counties are doing, or what our peer group does?
There's no one we've found that's doing something similar to this. We would be the first ones out there.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't like to be first on this kind of stuff.
Bleeding edge.
Right.
The other program you mentioned, short-term disability. How does that work exactly? Is that an employee-funded offering, or how does
Yes.
that work?
Yes, that would be employee paid at 100% of whatever the premiums are. And it just would be a group policy. So it'd be payroll deducted. So we have to manage it. So if you want to talk about a cost, there's a cost, because I would have to have a staff member that manages that and manages claims as well.
I guess we still end up with the problem with the employee. He's been there 2 years. He or she's been there 2 years. They have an event, and they didn't think they needed this short-term disability, but now here they are. They did need it, and they can't get it now.
No.
So that we can't force them to plan. So, I'm open to researching it all, but I'm a little pessimistic, I guess, that we try to solve something for every employee versus the problems with the new employees. And I was one. I sympathize with that. I always looked at it as the folks with the most vacation are the ones that need it the least, and it almost needs to work in reverse. But I don't know how you do that either. So that's it.
Thank you. Chairman Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Werman. Ms. Patty, short-term disability normally requires you to use all of your regular leave before it kicks in, correct?
The policy that we had that stipulation on it.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
But we have to wait and see what we get back
Right.
from the request for information to see what's available now.
So this policy that we are thinking about, or you are just bringing to us now, but we require these individuals to use up all their annual and their sick leave before this extra 3 weeks kicks in?
It would be an option, but until we get the information back from the short-term disability companies, we won't know what they're offering for us.
Yeah, because
So-
what I'm alluding to is that's why you have vacation time and that's why you have sick time in the times of trouble.
Understand?
Okay, and so I would rather, if someone is going to go out on maternity leave, a knee surgery, they should be required to use whatever leave they have in the annual leave bank and whatever they have accrued in their vacation time. And then if they're required to have, an additional 180, that's there for them. But I don't think we should allow them to use the 180 up front and then keep these other leaves in, because the leave keep reoccurring every pay period.
I understand.
So that's a challenge, that I would like to look into before we bring anything back. So what about an employee survey? Can we survey all employees of Charleston County rather than just, I think the only, in the survey that was done from the solicitor's office was only females, right? Are people a certain age?
Well, it was both males and females, definitely way more
Younger.
females.
Yeah, and younger.
Yes, and it's not to say that, other people could have answered the question, but
So,
yes.
but they
when we
didn't,
look
I
at
don't
it.
think they were afforded that. So I think what we should do is, ask every employee in the county to participate in a survey so we can get a true reading of how the employees of Charleston County feels.
Okay, an official survey, not an ad hoc survey.
Right.
Yes, I understand.
Everybody gets to participate. But, we do, and like I said, I sympathize with people too. But Reverend Milton, when you're talking about the bank, we had to stop it at the city because people were abusing it. They would use up all their time, and then they would go to a friend and say, hey, I need to get this, and then they would get. So what it is now is everybody can accrue up to 280 hours. And when you've used your 280, I can't give you anything, But if I got 500 hours, I lose 120, well, 220, because I can only accrue 280 on my anniversary date when I was hired. And I can tell you, since I've been there, I've been losing anywhere from 80 to 120 hours a year. Not because I said I got it, I had to use it, but I'm like Mr. Swears and Mr. Moody said, you used to work and you want to work, and if I'm not sick, I'm just not going to take off just to take off. And even when we had young kids, I ran a business of my own, when I didn't have nobody to pay me. If I wasn't there, I didn't get paid. And so you have to budget for these things. And I know the market, the job market is getting, I guess, thinner and thinner, and people are requiring more. But we have to be careful to, stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, because, that's what they put us up here to do. So I'm in favor, looking at some of these things. But I tell you, until the state officially makes this happen, I think it's going to get challenged. And if it gets challenged, we all going to be right where we're at right now. And so I think until the state makes it official, we got to look into doing things. And if it's official without any lawsuits, then maybe we might can go with something. That's just my take, Council.
Thank you, Chairman Pryor. Councilman Sass, and then I'll come to Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Holden, I had a couple of questions. Does sick leave and vacation time continue to accrue, or does it have to be used up by a certain time? And can anybody get paid for that?
So the policies are completely separate. The sick leave continues to accrue, okay? And the only thing with that is when you retire through PEBA, a portion of that can be taken and used towards your retirement, but it's not paid out.
Okay.
And on the annual leave, which is what vacation is, that has a maximum of 480 hours. So that's all you can carry over. Now, you have to be here quite a while to get 480 hours. But if you have been on December 31st, you have to get it under 480 because it will not carry over into the next year.
So
and
you
vacation is paid out. Vacation is paid out. Annual leave is paid out.
Thank you.
Councilman Johnson, then Councilman Middleton.
I want to go back to the short-term policy. So I'd like to know when someone has, and this is, I'm thinking in terms of the state, I don't know if you've already really researched, what they do, but the short-term policy, individuals paid for
Yes.
themselves. And so you said something about our staff is going to be managing that?
Well, it comes through payroll deduction. So
that time for the...
Yes, we manage that piece of it. We would manage that they're coming on and going off. Now, as far as the usage of it, when someone has a claim, we have one piece of paper that we have to fill out that just states whether or not they're an employee. But the insurance company gets the doctor certification and all that.
And the limit on the short-term policy is usually 3 months?
Yes, it's usually 90 days. Mm-hmm.
So also I wanted to know what happens to sick leave that, let's say an employee was here 10 years and built up all the sick leave, and then they go to another job, don't use the sick leave. Mm-hmm. They're not retiring from here. What happens to those hours?
It's gone. When they leave here,
so there's no money?
Mm-mm. No, it's not paid out. They can't take it with them to even another public sector.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Middleton.
I wanted to at least also raise the equity issue that may be associated with some of this, because if I'm salaried and I work in a salaried position and I work under a boss who then will say, oh, you could work from home. And so I don't go in, I'm sick, or whatever the case is, but I'm working from home technically. Mm-hmm. Or there are some departments, legally or illegally, they have some sort of internal understanding that will give you comp time, whatever, I mean, I'm not saying that's happening here, but I'm saying it happens. Mm-hmm. And so off the books, they'll let you sort of not put in sick leave or annual leave, but be out and do whatever you wish to do. For individuals who are hourly employees, who have to kind of punch a clock or something of that sort, it is difficult for them to play that kind of game, because if they don't come to work, they don't necessarily, they have to clock in, or they have to physically show up and be present in order to fulfill their job. So they can't work from home. They can't comp, the hours that they should have been physically present. And so how do we guard against, that sort of thing?
I would speak to the salary, the exempt staff first, in that if they are out for a day and they're not working, they have to use whatever paid leave is appropriate for them. And as far as comp time, if that's happening, it shouldn't be. We don't have that reported anywhere. So that's not a system that we have in place. So then as far as hourly people go, and yes, absolutely, there are lots of positions here that you can't do remotely. So they take annual leave or sick time if they are unable to come to work. If someone can work from home, that is up to the department head in that specific department to determine whether or not they can perform the essential functions of their job remotely.
Thank you, Ms. Holden. I just have a few thoughts, and then maybe the first thought is, do you need any action from council tonight on either of these items, the short-term disability or the emergency sick leave? I feel like we've given a fair amount of good feedback, but if we need to actually vote to sort of bless the research project moving forward, is that what y'all are?
Yes, I just need your support to go ahead and do the research, write the policy, which would come back to you. As far as the sick leave, the emergency sick leave bank goes, that's a policy change.
Okay.
So you would have to approve that in the end before we could implement that. Now, the short-term disability, we've already put that RFI out there, so we would like to just continue with that and be able to come back with what we see as the best proposal.
Very good. Well, I will just say my 2 cents is that, this obviously goes back to a lot of push and some discussion we had and heard in public comments about a parental leave, as you mentioned, kind of triggered by the state's recent decision. And I understand there's details to be worked out and potential challenges to be made, but I do think that, from my view, there's changes going on in the labor market, and we've seen some negative aspects of that. We've obviously got some concerns about retention and turnover. I've heard from a lot of folks, I don't know if this is specifically the county, but I've heard from folks in the private sector that offering money isn't even always enough. So, I'm excited to hear about, maybe a potential way that we can offer something that's not just money per se, but a sort of a structural support system, and a support system that, obviously the qualifying event would be maybe not just having a baby, but one that supports families and supports working families, be it hourly wage folks or professional folks. So I certainly would vote in support of this. That being said, I'll entertain any motion. I'm guessing the motion you want is to just sort of continue and then bring back to council a more fully formed policy. Is that? Or let's hear from Councilwoman Honeycutt first.
Well, I was just going to say, Mr. Werman, I think this isn't something we have to vote on. This is just a direct staff to continue their process,
Oh, very good.
which I'm fine with. at this
Well,
point.
certainly in that case, I think from the HR committee, we would direct Ms. Holden for you to continue and take some of this feedback, particularly with regard to costs and a lot of the other parameters that I think a lot of folks suggested, and certainly report back to us with a more fully sort of detailed plan, and we'd be happy to vote up or down on that, as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
will do that.
All right, moving on to item 2B. Chairman, do we want to suspend this meeting?
Yeah, let's suspend this and go into environmental management, and then we can come back to 2B.
We're going to suspend the,
So we're going to suspend that. Now we're going to move to environmental management. Mr. Moody is the chairman.
Chairman, we'll call this meeting to order. I chair this Environmental Management Committee. Ms. Johnson Mr. Sass, Mr. Worman, and Chairman Pryor serve on this committee. We'll entertain a motion to consider the minutes.
So move.
So moved, second by Mr. Worman. Any comments, deletions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2. Mr. Kessler, go.
Yep, actually, Mr. Moody, I'm gonna kick it off for us, if
Okay,
that's okay?
that'd be
Sure,
fine.
Sure. Council, this item is with regards to the recycling collection transition that's currently underway. If you remember, you have taken action to privatize many of your services. Most recently, the collection services, that privatization effort has transferred over to Republic as of June 6th, which was last Monday. We are currently in what we're calling week 1, even though this is the second week, because this week is the first week that the residents and customers that are being serviced this week are being serviced under the terms of the new contract. After a grueling 6 months of transition work, we are happy to report several things, one of which I want to specifically notify you of because I know that there were some concerns raised with regards to this, but we had a very, very successful employee transition over to Republic. None of the collections employees lost their job. Every single employee that was offered to Republic accepted, and they are now employees of Republic Services. No employee is making any less than they were making here at the county. Many of them are making more. They were also allowed to transfer their start date from the county into Republic Services allocation of their longevity process. So their start date transferred into service with Republic. And I just want you to know how hard those employees worked. They were literally on the road, many of them until Friday, June 3rd, some of them until Saturday, June 4th, and then they turned around first thing, 5 o'clock Monday morning, were at service at Republic doing the work of this county. So with that being said, the service is still every other week, so that did not change. We did go from 4 days to 5 days. So from a Monday through Thursday to a Monday through Friday. That does mean that there were lots of areas around the county that got a change in day of their service. And some of that has kind of played out in the traditional transition sense. I'm gonna let Mr. Kessler address some of that. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to him just so that he can give you an overview from the operational / industry side of things. I know that we've got a few new council members. I think Mr. Kessler has been here before, but he's with KCI. He's the principal of the consulting firm that we utilize for solid waste services.
Thank you, Ms. Ham. Mr. Kessler, welcome back.
Good to see you all. Ms. Ham asked me to do 2 things. One, talk a little bit about the transition that we were working on with staff, but also talk a little about what you see in transition like this industry-wise. So the first thing, this was a significant undertaking that you council directed to be done. You transitioned currently approximately 160,000 homes from the county to a private vendor. That's a big transition, and I think you should be proud of doing it and the results that have been obtained so far. So just to refresh everybody's memory, this was an RFP process that was gone through. Ms. Ham mentioned 6 months. The process actually, the 6 months is about the transition, but it goes back quite some time to bring this about. So from the RFP, it led to a short list and then negotiations, and then the transition then came about. Shifting, as I mentioned, from the public to private sector, I think your staff did a great job. I think working hand in hand with the county and Republic and our firm, I think I'm going to talk about some of the things that have been accomplished. It's been successful. I think we picked the right partner in Republic Services, and that they have really worked very well with Ms. Ham's office as well as with the county staff and vice versa. So that's some good news. Ms. Ham mentioned the every other week service. What I want to say about that is that's more unusual when you look around the country. Most communities have weekly service, so the every other week is a little different. And what that does is when you have to shift, because Ms. Ham mentioned going from 4 days to 5 days, well, it changed the routing and it changed the days of pickup for a number of customers. So that's a challenge when you do a transition, because someone's used to, for 12 years, putting out their recycling cart on a Tuesday, and now it's a Thursday. You have to communicate and make sure they get that, and then the person has to do it. So there's always room for some little glitches that pop up. So that's one of the reasons why. The second reason is the county's growth, as you all know better than anybody, has been tremendous in the since the county started doing this service. So the routes had to change. As mentioned, the days had to change. So that's why we had some little glitches. And I want to point out, this is still the first week because, as we mentioned, it's every other week service. So today is Thursday. So the Thursday customs of this week, today's the first day their carts are picked up. Tomorrow, there have been people waiting for 2 and possibly even 3 weeks because they got shifted to another day. They'll have their first service. So we're in week 1, although we're actually in week 2, if that makes any sense. There have been some delays. There have been some mishaps, and that's very common in a transition like this. People forgot their day. People forgot their week. It got mixed up. There was a great job. Many of you have probably seen in your neighborhoods, there were neighborhood signs everywhere. There were postcards sent out everywhere. It was in the newspaper. So it was a major effort to communicate, but that doesn't mean everybody paid attention, saw that, or recalled it. So that's why you have those little glitches up front. I think, again, the county and Republic did a great job working together to try and minimize those. So where are we at today? The county staff and Republic are in touch continually, morning, midday, and the end of the day. In fact, we just got an update before we came down here. So they're working very closely to address anything that pops up. You should feel assured of that to minimize the unfinished routes that sometimes happens. And what happens in an unfinished route, and the commitment we've got from them, is that if they're driving an area, pick any area you want, and they run out of time because the DOT requires a maximum amount they could be on the streets. And by the way, the county has been very supportive of what they're doing and helping them with routing and helping them with everything they can because it's been a transition of service. The next morning, the next day, the first routes that are done are the ones that weren't finished the day before. So there's no carts on the street for 2 days. They're out. By the next day, the end of the next day, they're picked up. So that's happening. A typical transition of this kind to work out the kinks and the little things that pop up, we see that taking usually in the 3-month period, 90 days. I feel pretty confident, I feel extremely confident that in this case, we're going to be able to reduce that to a fraction of that time, and you will have the service running at 100% efficiency. And we've talked to Republic about that, and they are on board with that. So with that, so far so good. Remember, you're 1 week in. I know there have been some glitches in some areas, and stuff happens, so to speak. You have to understand why it happened and how we don't have it happen again in somebody else's neighborhood. So that's it. Be happy to answer any questions. It was really just focusing on the collection changeover that's occurred, but any questions you have, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. And I do have a few things, but I'll open it up to any council members with questions specifically about recycling. Yes, sir. Mr. Worman.
Thank you, Chairman Moody. Listen, I hope this winds up in a question, but I am going to spin a little yarn here and tell a little story. And I don't know that it even starts on the contractor side. It might have, by the timing that I understand our schedules work, it might have been a miss by our sort of the final days of the county's authority. But we had in my district, I had a constituent with a missed street, basically. And in the past, it's been fairly easy to get that fixed. And so what concerns me is, it seemed to me that it took a lot longer for us to get someone out there. I mean, I feel like in the year I've been here, we've had situations like, maybe the person was even at fault and they didn't put their bin out. But in any event, we've been able to get a truck out there the next day. Weren't able to do that, and I don't entirely know why. And I guess as we are entering into a period where we're sort of expecting to have some glitches and some mistakes to be made, do we have anything in place that's sort of the cleanup crew, the sort of quick response that can kind of get out and patch some of these holes before the system's running up 100%? That's what I'm kind of concerned about.
Mr. Warren, I think it's a great question. I think you're probably right about the timing. What happened with the transition, I think Natalie, Ms. Sam mentions the county employees moved over. Well, the last couple of weeks, the people who aren't moving over, who chose to go to a job somewhere else who were drivers, they were very, very short-staffed. And my hunch is the period you're talking about is in May, and I'm not saying that needs to happen no matter what month it is, who's providing the service. The quick response to that is the contract requires them, once they get through this initial transition period, to any missed service, they have to get the next day. If not, there's fairly significant liquidated damages that they pay for those missed services or missed routes. So once this transition is over, if you see that, there's a fund then being developed to make that up. And the last thing that your new service provider wants is to pay liquidated damages, but be more important, not to have a good service record with you. So I can't speak to May. I'm not sure what happened fully in that transition, but going forward, I think once the transition is over, you won't see that occurring.
Right, and Mr. Werman, I do want to let you know that the county still, the call center is still a function of the county. So those complaints or those missed picks, and those are communicated directly to the county. It's our responsibility to make sure that it's properly communicated to Republic, and we can then see that it's taken care of. And if not, we still have a few staff here on board that can wrap things up during this transition period.
Okay, good to know.
So you hopefully will see a lot less of that.
Other questions? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank
You were
you,
asking
sir.
if you were putting your hand up or your pencil up or what? Okay. Go, Ms. Johnson.
May I? So, Mr. Kessler, it's good to see you again, and I do have a few questions. I am always concerned about the employees, so I'm glad to know that those people that transferred over seems to be very pleased with what was being offered to them. But I want to know, what is the total number of employees we had involved in the transfer, and how many actually transferred over?
I'm not sure the right number, if it was 16 or 19 transferred over. Is that about right?
I think it was 17 that transferred
Right
over.
in between.
And that's all was involved, or?
No, ma'am. So there were a handful, maybe 5 or 6 employees that opted to, I know that one works for a private industry, one went to the school district. They found employment elsewhere throughout the county in either private industry or other municipalities.
Okay. All right. Thank
But they
you.
were offered the right to transfer to Republic, but they sought out employment elsewhere.
Okay, well, they didn't call me, so that means that I'm okay on that. And the contract is for how many years with Republic?
7 years.
7 years. Okay. One other question then. So you mentioned about the growth we have here. I'm just wondering, I know we have a lot of new subdivisions, certainly like in my area, Johns Island, I see that. I'm just wondering, how easy is it for people to now be added on to the service, whether they are new subdivisions or there are some areas that may have had some service, but the whole community wasn't being serviced. And I'm thinking about some settlement communities because, for instance, there might not have been a turnaround at the end of the road. And so that road did not get service. But I'm just wondering, in the future, how would we incorporate an area that was left out of a community service?
It depends. So, we have the franchise agreement in place. So it depends on where those individuals are located and whether or not they're in the unincorporated areas, if they're within any of our franchise agreement areas. But if it's a appropriate area that should be serviced under the terms of the Charleston County Recycling Program, then that's just a simple call and request for a cart and service.
Okay, so that would be your question.
Right now, yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I know I already have 2 complaints where people were.
It's important to know where it
Yeah,
is.
so I'll have to give you the
Yes,
information
ma'am.
about where it is. And I just want to make sure that there would be some opportunity for them to be included in
Yes, ma'am.
the service. Thank you.
Johnson, just one other thing to add to that just remember, there's 3 ways people could recycle in Charleston County. One is depending where they live, through the convenience centers and drop-offs that are located. 2 is if they're in the unincorporated area, there's a contractor who offers that service to people outside of the city's area, in the unincorporated area. And 3 is, as Ms. Ham was just talking about, the franchise service provider, who now is picking up those approximately 160,000 homes. And,
Okay.
and it will be added to during the course of their contract.
Well, I need to get the locations, but I think they were in Hollywood and Ravenel. And so these are people who are saying, we should not have to go to the convenience center when our neighbor right next, on the next street, is having curbside pickup. So that's going to be something that maybe the council would need to look at. How do we service those people? The complaint, the resolution that I got to this was, we can't service them because there's no turnaround at the end of the road. That should not be, to me, an excuse not to go and serve those people.
I'm happy to talk about that further and look at those locations, Ms. Jones.
Okay.
Chairman Pryor.
To counteract your point, if there is not a turnaround service, you can't take a big truck in there and expect them to back all out. And the only alternative I may see is they roll it to the road, and then they, after it's dumped, they pick it up. Because you can't expect a provider to send a truck down there and do damage to his truck, or do damage to wiring or something, just to pick up a can. So those folks, if they're on a road that's not owned by the county, and there's no turnaround, we don't need to give them false hope as if the truck is going to come in there and pick up. They just have to bring it to the road, and then when it's dumped, then go back and roll it back out, because I don't know how far it is from the road, but it can't be too much far if it's a road that they can't turn around on. See, the liability is an issue.
Information and
Yeah, but you don't want to give people false hope to say, well, the big truck is going to be coming down there, because, I don't think that's feasible. And I can't speak for Republic, but they'd be crazy to sign an agreement to go down there knowing that they're going to have problems.
Well, I will say I did ask for the residents to find out if they can get the land acquired at the end of the road so that they could have a turnaround. Because for other equipment like fire departments, EMS, we need to figure out a way. How do we get down the road? So maybe they may not be, or they may be. We need to look into that.
Yeah, that's a public safety issue when you're talking to EMS and fire. But,
Same kind of equipment.
Yeah, but if it's something that we can do, fine. But I just don't want them to have false hope thinking next week the truck is going to come rolling down that road, because that won't happen.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Honeycutt.
I know this only affects residential service, right?
No, their collection, they're commercial customers as well.
Okay, and so the commercials every week though, right?
Commercial is every other week.
Oh, okay. I must have misunderstood. But also, are beach communities being serviced every week in the summer?
Yes, beach communities, traditionally, beach communities are serviced every week in the summer. It is being done a little differently in Isle of Palms this year.
Okay.
That information was not captured in the routing that Republic ended up presenting. And so the county is servicing Isle of Palms every other week. And Republic is servicing them on the alternative weeks so that they get their every other week service. So the county still has a collections function. We still operate the convenience centers. So we transfer that material to the landfill and through the transfer stations. And so we still have a collections operation, and we still have trucks that belong to the county. And so we're utilizing those vehicles to service that community.
But Republic is now serving Folly Beach weekly for the summer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kessler, I've got a couple things. As you know, West Ashley was I guess I'll call it week 0. And we had a bumpy start. We had several neighborhoods, not just roads, not just houses, neighborhoods that were missed. Yeah. We were getting bad information. What has the vendor learned this past week that may improve over the rest of the 8 council districts as we move forward?
I think they learned a number of things. One is that this council takes this quite seriously. And if there's a problem in any council member's district, there's pretty solid assurance that they will hear from them in very short order. And that message was delivered, and I think appropriately delivered, and their response was appropriate back to that. And so I think that was a gift in disguise for one district's unfortunate service to those folks. But the days since then have been greatly improved. And from checking with them every day, which we have, the only thing that's happened since that event is that there have been days they're unable to finish the duration of a route that they go back to the next morning. So I appreciate what happened, and we obviously
I didn't.
no, I appreciate what happened in your district and how you dealt with it is
Okay.
where I was going, and I think Ms. Ham, you would agree that the response back for them was, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, we understand,"
Yeah.
and it was used as an example not to have occur again. So thank you for what you did.
Absolutely. Chairman Pryor, with your permission, we've got an agenda item 3F on the Finance Committee related to some contracts. I thought while Mr. Kessler was here, it might be appropriate for him to give us a quick overview so that we're ready to vote for that in finance since it deals with environmental management. If you don't mind, I'd like to have him discuss that very briefly for council.
Well, what we can do is we can end this committee, then go right into finance, and then we can take up that item on finance. Because you finished with your committee, right?
That'd be fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got some questions. I was going to do it in environmental management, but I can do it just as easily
You can
in
do it
finance.
in the finance, and that way everybody gets to participate.
That's fine. Then this committee meeting is closed unless anybody else has any other comments.
All right, so now we open.
Off, Mr. Kessler.
Chair, whichever chair is in charge of this meeting, I would
Mr.
simply like to say to Ms. Ham, Mr. Kessler, and just to environmental management, because I've dealt with some of these issues prior to the transition, and even since the transition, I think they do an excellent job. That when things are missed, specifically in communities that didn't get the collection or whatever the case is, they have been responsive and prompt. And I think we need to say that, and we do recognize that this is a transition, and we need to realize that it's an anomaly as opposed to the norm.
Okay. All right, that concludes our recycling committee, our environmental management committee. So now we're going to open up our finance committee where all members of council participates. I am the chair of this committee. So now we're going to move right on to item 3, so Mr. Kessler can go because he's got a flight. So what is the pleasure of council?
Move for all 3 items approval.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Mr. Moody, anything?
No, sir.
All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Any more questions while he's here, Mr. Moody? You want to talk back to him, or are you satisfied?
Well, when we get to the item in consent agenda, I'll bring him back up.
That's what we voted.
I'm sorry. I thought we were, okay.
It's already passed, but you still can ask your question.
I'm sorry, I was,
Mr. Moody, there's some really good news. My flight is 11:45 this evening, so we can stay here.
we could
as
talk
long-
all night.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to keep these other folks. I've already talked with you. For item 3F, which is these agreements, would you please consider a short update to council about some of these, the movements? We're increasing some fees, we're decreasing some fees in one other area. So if you can kind of put that in a bullet point of what it means to this council.
Is there a specific agreement or that you wanted to talk about, or there's a number of agreements that are in that? It's
So I think it might be helpful if I may,
Please,
Mr. Moody.
please.
Mr. Kessler, could you address for the council just some industry-related increases that kind of have happened across the board? And I am happy to specifically give you the information with regards to each of the contracts under item 3F.
yeah. So what's happening is that a good start?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what's happening in the industry is what's happening in the world we live in, but a little bit more magnified. And the reason for that is all garbage trucks are made out of metal. And if anybody's bought metal in the last year, you know the price increase in that, it's been substantial and more than double for some steels and galvanized material. So you have truck costs that have gone substantially up in the last year. I think there's nobody in this room who doesn't know about what's happened with fuel in the last 60, 90 days. And these trucks drive around on fuel. So that cost is going only in one direction up. Let's hope it's not for a long duration, but it's certainly what's happening now. And the cost of labor is a similar situation. The biggest challenge that the waste industry has nationally is drivers. Because would you rather drive in an Amazon air-conditioned, nice Sprinter van or drive in a garbage truck? No matter how much you make the garbage truck, it's not as nice as that nice Sprinter van. And there's lots of packages being delivered, so there's lots of drivers' jobs. And I think we all know about the shortage of drivers, both short haul and long haul drivers. So that's a cost going up. Then you add to that what's happening with inflation and the CPI. And the bad news for you, Mr. Moody, would be that the cost is only going one way of all services. And in the garbage industry, even more so, they're going up. And we do procurements all around the country, particularly in the Southeast, and everything we've seen has gone up for different reasons, different places. A low increase in service of any kind of solid waste cost would be 25%. And we're seeing numbers 200 to 300% in jurisdictions that have had contracts that they've been in for a while that are lower. So increases are happening. Increases are happening in anything that has to do with moving the material, be it recyclables, garbage, or organic yard waste. Increases are happening at disposal sites, which we dispose of material both in ours and others, and increases are happening in the transfer of that material. So there's only one way I could see, which is higher. And you guys have remarkably kept the price to the customers very stable for a very long period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. Ms. Ham, do you have anything to add about the transfer contracts, disposal contracts?
So I will just say that it is 2 transfer station contracts. The way that works is that the material is taken to a transfer station, and then the transfer station company transports it to Oak Ridge Landfill, the landfill owned by Waste Management. It's a function of how we manage space in our own landfill and utilizing the system in place here in Charleston County most efficiently. The cost of those 2 services has gone up an average around $5 for each of them, for each ton that is transferred. Additionally, the cost of disposal at that Waste Management landfill has gone up about $3. And that's all captured in the yellow sheet that you all saw.
Ms. Ham or Mr. Kessler, are these contracts and actions indicative of a county who's protecting a long-term asset that will need to be replaced soon?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Mr.
We
Moody?
have no life left on our landfill, or not much life left on our
Say that,
landfill.
Mr. Moody.
Well-
The price up even higher.
10 years, 12 years, whatever we've got left. I mean, are these actions the actions of a county that's protecting and trying to prolong the life of a very valuable asset?
Well, I would say 2 things to that. One is, yes, this all goes back to a system that used to be here when the incinerator and the landfill were the 2 disposal sites. And with the closing of the incinerator, that tonnage, which was about 50-50, had to be replaced. So that was, we put in place, you all put in place a transfer station network to compensate for those tons, to keep the tons going to Bees Ferry approximately half of the total of the county. That's been maintained. The only way to extend the life on Bees Ferry is to increase what you're transferring out, which has a cost of approximately $23, $25 a ton when you transfer it as opposed to keep it at your facility. So we have that same balance in place, if that's addressing your question. And then as far as the contracts go, the only thing I may have neglected to state is that, as a reminder, those were all RFP negotiated, and they were quite the negotiation to get those prices to where we are. So I would say the price that you obtained in those contracts, I think, is very reasonable and is very competitive. But the bad news is they've gone up. But to address your question, I think the balance is 50-50. It's a policy decision. You could decide to have 70% of it transferred out of the county, but you just increased your costs by a minimum of $5 a ton. A minimum. It's probably higher than that if we were to stop
Mr.
it.
Kessler, how long do you think it would take us, and you don't know some information, but how long would it take us to find a possible landfill site? What do you see in other counties around? And I ask you because we had a lay-down site, and this, sorry, Mr. Pryor, this is why I want to discuss it, environmental management. We had a property on Johns Island for a lay-down site, and neighbors went nuts, and I said then, what are we going to do when we've got to find a landfill? How long does it take other counties or peers to find these things and to permit, and when do we get the ball started on this stuff?
I have a client that, actually Bethany Jewell is here with me, who's the project manager, both here and working on this other client, started a process they have a landfill, and to identify and site their new landfill 20 years of life left on that landfill. And I would say in solid waste master plans, which are a pretty common tool, that's one of the things that is looked at is, well, what is your next option and how are you going to do that and what's the time frame? 20 years, I think, is way too long. But they did it because the land value goes up so quick that their priority was, let's buy this land quicker and hold it rather than try and buy it 10 years from now. My answer to your question, it will depend on DHEC, it will depend on the battles of siting. If you're going to do a landfill with the adjoining property owners, it's a 10-year process. Somewhere between 5 and 10 years is what 5 years would be a miracle.
We need to get started. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, Mr. Kessler, I think Ms. Ham said it's a 7-year contract.
The collection contract for recyclables, yes.
I guess there's probably some increasing fees in that. Or
See, there's CPI and fuel adjustments that are a percent of the total number. It's partially CPI, partially fuel adjustments on an annual and quarterly basis. Quarterly basis for fuel, annual for the CPI.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to the next item, which will be item number 1, approval of minutes for May 5th, 24th, and June 2nd. What is the pleasure?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. Item 2 is a resolution honoring Chaplain Eva Small Smith. What is the pleasure?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
To adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any nays? Ayes have it. Okay. Item 4 is 4A, designate funds for use in FY23.
Mr. Chairman?
We didn't
Mr.
do all of it.
Sass?
I'd move to approve the department head recommendation and also to include $50,000 from the FY22 council contingency, the FY23 council contingency, and the designated funds for FY23.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item number 5 is the Community Life Enrichment Center Grant Agreement Amendment. Somebody want to explain? Ms. Johnson, there's a move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Swears?
I guess it's, I don't mean to say this too bluntly, but I'm not surprised we're at this point. And it was a 5-year opportunity that didn't come to fruition, and now we're giving them 1 more year. Are we pretty rigid on that, or are we going to keep giving them 1-year extensions? And that's just a rhetorical question. I don't expect an answer.
Okay, you finish?
Yes.
All in favor?
Mr. Pryor? I have
Yes, sir.
a question. Following up a little bit, the notes were a little bit unclear because it looked like from the yellow sheet that the contract that we had ran out in June of 2019.
Right, it did.
So we're actually giving them a 4-year extension if we grant them this 1-year extension tonight because we're 3 years past due from granting them the original extension that was due, if that makes any sense. So this action should have taken place in June of 2019, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Ms. Ham, have we waived any of our rights by not enforcing our contract the way it was?
It's an argument that can be made. I wouldn't say that you've taken specific action enough to qualify as a waiver, but it's certainly a position that could be, an argument that could be made.
Mr. Davis, is 1 year going to matter? Or, well, whoever. I thought you were the sponsor of this. For that.
The Community Life Enrichment Center said that they have been awarded a grant for the full amount of the funding. I haven't been provided any information on that grant or proof of those funds. So based upon that, I am a little doubtful that full $1.2 million will be funded in a year.
Hang on, Mr. Sass. Ms. Ham, and I'm okay doing it for another year, but I think we're going to be back here again. Can we move or amend the motion to say we don't waive any of our rights? Or, I mean, would that help? I mean, I want to make sure that if we decide next year that we're not going to do this, they can't come back and say, well, you didn't hold our feet to the fire for 3 years. You've waived your rights. I don't.
Restate your question for me, Mr. Moody.
Would a motion to approve subject to our not waive, we'll give you the additional year, just so long as you know we don't waive any of our rights because we didn't do this in 2019 when the contract officially expired.
Right. If you vote to give them an additional year, I think that automatically indicates that they can take this action, and a year from now, you can take it back and do, pursuant to the provisions of the original contract. I don't think you need the additional waiver language.
Okay.
No, nothing for me, sir. Sorry.
So can we just say this waiver or renewal is contingent on them getting the $1.2 million in a 6-month or 8-month period?
You want to say a 1-year renewal contingent upon them getting the funds for
Within 6
construction
months.
Within 6 months?
Yeah.
Then you should do a 6-month renewal instead of the 1 year that's being requested, if that is the goal.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. What I don't want is next year we'll be back at the same crossroad.
I just wanted to.
So to me, this would be, if this passes, this is the final year, and if it doesn't, then the Greenbelts have to do what they do, which is the property comes back to the Greenbelts program, which is because the money was originally bought with Greenbelt to dispose of however we want to, either give it to the town of Ravenel or use it for ourselves for some type of park.
Mr. Chairman, your directive currently states that if they haven't shown proof of those funds within 5 years, then the property should transfer to Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission.
All right, so you're giving them 1 more year, and after that year, then it goes to PRC, no exceptions. Is that what this council is saying tonight?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes, all right, so I just want to make sure, Ms. Honeycutt,
These folks have told you that they have gotten the 1.2, correct?
That they have been awarded a grant that will cover the full amount that they are supposed to show proof of.
And have they shown, or do they have any proof?
Not to this point, it's not been provided,
Okay.
but it has been requested.
I'm going to vote no on this. There's a chance I'll vote yes on Tuesday if they can provide it, and if they can't, I'm voting no.
okay, Mr. Sass?
Mr. Chairman, I just realized that I second this motion. And in 2014, when we voted on this, I had to recuse myself because we had appraised that property.
Right.
So I have to recuse myself from this, but also somebody else will have to second the motion.
Who wants to second the motion? Mr. Werman, okay.
I can use my second, but I share concerns. I probably will vote to move forward today, but I might actually switch the other way. I'm curious to see what's being represented to you. So yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Swears?
Ms. Honeycutt, I like your idea of giving them till Tuesday to
Either have it or
show
don't.
some proof that you have it. If they said they have it, let's see the proof, and then if not, let's just close this thing out Tuesday.
You good with that? Ms.
I'm
Johnson?
okay with that.
Okay, you good with that?
So I need to make the motion.
No. Just let it go like it is, and then people can change their vote on Tuesday. It's just coming out of committee, going to full council. And so you're going to go to them tomorrow, which is the only day, because Monday is a holiday,
I'll reach out to them tonight, sir.
tonight and Tuesday and time. You have to have some type of proof of, that they have this money.
Yes, sir.
And you need to relay to them that council says if it doesn't, the majority is going to reject this extension and just turn the property over to the PRC.
Yes, sir.
I think it can be no clearer than that, all right? So
That's good.
all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right, we got 2 nays. Did you name Mr. Werman?
Let me get a clarification.
That's
What-
right.
The motion again is
Hold
what?
on.
Sorry.
Reverend Milton, you were a
Nay.
nay.
That was a
And Ms.
nay.
Honeycutt a nay. The motion is to grant the 1-year extension, and that goes to the full council on Tuesday, with the exception of if they don't provide the proof by Tuesday, then council can vote it down.
Yeah, it's an awkward motion, but I'll just vote nay tonight. But I can change that on Tuesday if I want to.
So 3 nays and 5 ayes. Okay, so it moves forward to Tuesday night.
So one recusal, and it couldn't be 5 because one person is.
One recusal, so it's still 4-3.
Oh,
Yeah, because the abstention doesn't count in the vote count, so.
Yeah, so it's just full 3. All right. So that moves forward, and, you know, he can go and do what he got to do. All right. Item number 6A has already been done. There doesn't need to have any action. And so 6B, we need to go back. We're going to suspend council and then go back to our human resources. There's need of an executive session to discuss employees' valuation. Is that correct, Mr. Worthing?
That's correct, Chairman Pryor. Do I have a motion to go into the executive session?
Hold, and other personnel matters, if need be. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So moved.
All right, there's second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Werman, this is your committee, sir. We're going into executive session.
Indeed.
Sir. And we only need council members, no employees. Correct. Folks, we should be back shortly. It shouldn't take that long.
All right, that concludes the executive session. We held reviews of all 4 county employees. I will say that all 4 county employees certainly meet or exceed expectations, and we will certainly discuss and review those reviews in more detail with them individually.
And add this to their file as well. This
Yes,
is
indeed.
a letter in their file. Okay, you done, Mr. Whitman? Okay.
The housing, I'm sorry, the Human Resources Committee. Thank you.
All right, so is there anything else to come back before this body before we adjourn from finance?
Mr. Chairman, finance, back to the finance meeting. I'd like to withdraw my second on item 3G, and Mr. Moody, I think.
I need to, if I've moved for consent agenda, I need to I need to take that
So
off.
let's reconsider 3G, and I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moving second, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Recuse.
All right, so you gotta state the reason why.
I've got it right here. The reimbursement. The reimbursement is the reason.
Reason?
I'm not voting to reimburse myself money.
All right, so that's the record, and then you fill out the form. Okay, anything else? Mr. Salisbury, I'd like for you to add, the Tuesday's agenda, the administrator and the county attorney's pay.
Okay,
It's for discussion on Tuesday, special finance committee agenda.
okay.
All right, there ain't nothing else? Meeting adjourned.